Alright, guys, today I want to talk about the basics and fundamentals of sales, not the fancy advanced sales tactics, none of the sales guru bullshit, just the very basics because everybody on this planet should learn how to sell. I agree that getting a sales job, especially when you're young, is one of the best things you can do for yourself. You don't have to make a career out of it. I don't intend to make a career out of it, but the confidence you can build from it and the freedom you can get out of it and the opportunities you can create with the sales ability um, cannot be understated. It is crucial, and I think the problem is there's so many misconceptions on what it means to sell. And for one, people think that you have to be a natural at it. I do not believe that. I've always liked talking to people. I'm not the most extroverted at all. I definitely like my alone time too, but I was definitely not a natural at sales. In fact, when I started, I was very unconfident and very nervous when I first started to sell, and I'll get into that story in a bit. But I think it's very important because before anything can get done, something must be sold first. And it's a complete lie that if something is good, that it sells itself. Everything is being sold and marketed, even things in the grocery store. Like, think about like when you're at the cash register, they put the candies and all the sweet stuff down eye level with the children. That's marketing. That's psychology of sales. They know the kid is gonna like the candy, grab it and give it to their mama, and mom's gonna buy it. The music they play is sales. It's putting you in a certain mood to go shopping. The placement of everything's how they place the junk food and the sweets in the middle and all the healthy stuff around. So you go in between the aisles and get the unhealthy stuff. That is sales too. It's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. You need to know how to sell. If you want to get a job, even outside of sales, what is wrong with me? Sales. Even outside of sales, you need to know how to sell yourself. If you're an artist, if you're a creative, you need to know how to sell your vision to others, either who need to cooperate, say you're like making a film, making a play, or you're trying to sell pieces. Obviously, you need to know sales. If you want to start your own business, you need to know sales. And it's definitely going to be an uncomfortable thing for most people because you're going to have to face what you believe to be as rejection. God, man, I'm fighting the flu right now and the words are just not coming out, but you're going to have to bear with me because I do not know how to edit videos yet and I don't really want to. But I will. But I'm trying to pump out content faster. So just bear with me and listen to a human speak and fumble about. All right. So my story. Sales did not come naturally to me. I first got into sales when I was learning to be a personal trainer. I was finishing up college. It was during COVID, and I reached out to this gym that trained a lot of athletes and had physical therapists and just seemed really cool and I was really interested in. And I told him, hey, I'm finishing up my degree. I don't have a certification or anything, but I just want to see, like, is there a way for me to shadow you guys and eventually get a job? And that's basically what happened. I shadowed trainers at that gym for over a month, maybe 2-3 months. I don't remember exactly. I was working out there. I was there from like morning till night every day, because most clients are either going before or after work anyway. So I was there from 6 a.m. most days till like closing, like 8 p.m. And I was just absorbing all the information. All the trainers there were super smart, super knowledgeable. Some were physical therapists or in school for physical therapy. Others just had a very good understanding of sports science and all of these things. So it was just a lot, and it was very cool because I enjoyed you know, how deep that went because I was, really into soccer and I was really into this stuff, and I just thought, this is what I wanted to do. And then eventually, after some time, just joining in and like leading sections of the group trainings, they trusted me to start doing my own consultations. And a consultation is, in essence, where personal trainers and physical therapists would sell. It's more than that. You don't want to sell something to somebody who doesn't need it or sell the wrong things, but you're a business, you got to get clients. So a consultation is just, taking somebody who's interested in training, figure out what their needs are, figuring out what they're looking for, and, take them through a demo session, and then after, sign them up. I don't know if it was the first client, but it was a client that stuck with me. He was an older gentleman, not very confident and not very in shape. I don't think he had ever really trained, and he needed a lot of encouragement. And I think it was another trainer who introduced him to this gym, and she was the one who let me know, like, hey, just so you know, this is the things about him. But me being so young and naive and seeing like all these intelligent trainers and people at the gym, I felt like what I really needed to do was just act like I really knew all this stuff. I was an expert in everything. So I took him through like a demo consultation session, had him do all these mobility tests and all these things. And this was just an older gentleman, probably in his 60s, who wasn't very mobile and wasn't very strong and wasn't very much of anything. And I was doing like, tests to see like how his range of motion at the hips and the shoulders and all of that stuff, when in reality he just needed someone to push him to exercise a little bit and work out a little bit. But I was young, I was stupid, my ego couldn't handle that. I was super nervous to sign him up after the session, but I went through it. I said, hey, these are the costs. You can do 3 times a week for this month, 2 times a week for this much, once a week for this much. I think he knew that he wanted to do it, but like the first session wasn't good enough, so he just did for him, and I don't blame him. Looking back, I don't blame him one bit, but it just wasn't good enough to the fact that he just signed up for once a week, which was fine. And I remember like dreading those sessions, and I think he dreaded them too, because I was just like, man, I don't know what it is. Like, I can't figure it out, how to like really be like a confident trainer and like turn this guy into my vision of like what a successful client would be, right? Because I had like this sports science background, and I thought I was going to make him achieve all these metrics, and he was going to be super mobile and super fit, but it was not the case. He just needed to exercise a little bit and have somebody encourage him so that he could take a few exercises and do them at home too. And I'm not saying we never built rapport, there was never any like good moments, but it was just a learning moment for me. And I think it took me some time to pick up on like what it really means to be a salesperson, because yes, I trained him after, but I would argue, and I actually heard this from somebody I talked to who was a personal trainer too, and it like opened my mind that coaching is selling. Like, it's one and the same. What you're doing is figuring out what they want, what they're looking for, and leading them to that without just telling them, figuring out why they want it, what they want, first of all, why they want it, and helping them and guiding them there. It's really that simple. You talk about like, you listen to like the advanced salespeople, and they talk about like, oh, you gotta push their pain points, you gotta, figure out what really triggers them, what drives them. All that really means is that if you're meeting with a prospect, whether it was somebody you called before and they didn't know who you were or knocked on their door, or they called you to schedule an appointment, it doesn't matter. The fact that they agreed to meet with you means there's something they're hoping to get out of meeting with you. That's all that is. That's the reason. And all selling is just figuring out what it is exactly, because they're coming to you because whatever it is, whether it's fitness, whether it's buying a new roof, health insurance, something for their tech company, they're not the expert, and they have gaps, and they need you to help fill those gaps. But if you're just unloading all this information, trying to sound smart, it's not going to benefit them. So there's a skill to delivering these things, which I didn't understand when I was younger, when I was very new to sales, because I was so nervous, I was so in my head, I thought it was all about me. No, you can know so many things, and talking with a client, you really only need to share 1% of that information, and it's going to be the information that they ask about, or if they have a misconception, just something you can help them clear up so they have a better perspective. But besides that, you're really there to understand them, what they're here for. They know what you're there for, whether it's because you're a personal trainer trying to sell trainings or whatever. They know, or they believe, that you're just there to take their money, and your job is not to go straight into pitching or selling what you normally do. No, because you can't be for everybody. If you're for everybody, you're not for anybody. That's why a lot of salespeople talk about disqualifying, because not everybody's going to be a great fit for what you're offering. You don't have to be an ethical salesperson. I would recommend it, but people aren't stupid. They know who to trust anyway. So it's not like you think lying is going to get you better numbers. I don't think so. I mean, you could argue that there's a level of dishonesty in all of us. But from my experience, the people I saw who were bigger bullshitters in sales, I don't think they really got better numbers than me. I think people can understand quiet confidence versus someone just trying to sell something. We're going to get into that in a minute too. But yeah, so really selling is just figuring out what they need and figuring out a solution for them. You present it, but you don't push it on them. You guide them to it with questions. So there's the whole sales process, right? In the beginning, right? If they don't know you, if you're someone who has to set appointments, you have to knock doors, cold call people, now's not the time to really get deep into conversation. That's the time where you really just want to introduce yourself, tell them what you're offering, and say this is what they'll get out of it. And if you know what common objections are, you can address it in your elevator pitch, if that makes sense. I don't know. I used to sell roofs, and we used to see if it can get covered through insurance. A lot of people don't want to go through insurance, or they don't want to pay for a new roof. Those are two different things, but I would tell people, hey, look, I'm not going to file for you. Even if there is damage, I can't file for you. But what I can do is tell you what I see, and it'll be up to you to make the decision, right? So when I'm giving my elevator door knocking pitch to someone, when I'm talking to them, I'm already clearing out one of their concerns, one of their objections, before they even bring it up. There's a lot to sales. So this is going to be a lot of information, and I'll probably have to condense it and make more videos. But yeah, so that's one thing, or it's like, oh, I don't want to pay for it. Well, you're not obligated to pay me anything. I wouldn't use that verbiage. I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but no, this is just a free inspection to see if there is damage. If there is no damage, I don't want to waste each other's time anyway. And if there is damage, we can see if it's something that you can get covered through insurance. There was a lot more to it, but it did work, and for valid reason, because there was storm damage on a lot of roofs. So it wasn't like a scam or any bullshit like that. But, people have their guards up. So let's back up. So what am I saying? So the beginning part of sales is if you don't have somebody coming to you, you have to go find these people. This is called prospecting. That is the time where you have to be very expedient, very confident, and very clear and concise. Don't give people time to think. Not because you're giving somebody a bad offer, but people don't like change. They don't like risk, right? You need to present something in a way that is such obviously going to be a yes that how could they ever say no, right? When I was door knocking and we had this door knocking trainer, he took us through the script and all of that. At the end of the day, and I was skeptical of the script. I thought some of it was fluff and BS, but I don't blame him because he didn't know our company and what we were doing exactly. But at the end of the day, he said something to me. He was like, Mickey, you had such a big personality in the office, talking about whatever, you're just so, talkative and big personality. And then we got out here and I was like, where did he go? You're in sales. You're not there to be an order taker. You're supposed to be the one making the decisions. And that's very important. Back to the prospecting. See, there's so many things to talk about. I'm gonna have to like divide stuff up more, but it gets deep, right? And it's not about systems. It's not about like scripts. Nothing like that. It's a beautiful thing. It's a lot of fun. It's because it's so challenging. But it has nothing to do with what you guys think, like what you might think sales is if you don't understand it. So, what I'm saying by that is, when you're calling somebody, you're giving them an opportunity to get onto something good, right? You might not think that when you're first getting into sales, and you might not know enough about what you're selling, because no company is going to spend 3 months training you just on their products and services, because that's too much time, either you not getting paid or them paying you to not be selling, right? So if you're starting off selling at a company, there is going to be a time where, I hate to say it, but it's almost like faking it till you make it, because you don't fully understand what you're offering, but you still have to, offer it. But the truth is that most things, even if they have salespeople selling it, are benefiting people. That's why people are spending money on it. So you need to present it in a way that this is something worth spending money on, worth investing in, okay? That's going to come with practice, and it's going to come with a belief in yourself too, because you could have spent like 20 years in an industry, just pivot to sales, you could know everything, but still not have that belief that somebody should be giving you money. So it's also working on yourself and your own belief. But yeah, so always from the beginning steps, you are the authority. You are somebody here to help them. You're not a waiter. You're not asking for their order. They don't know what they want. If they knew what they wanted, they would just go buy it. They need somebody to help them through the process, okay? And you don't know, if you're just calling someone, if you're just knocking on their door, you don't know either if you can help them. So you don't have to promise them anything. You can just tell them what the possibility is. Tell them what you think could happen from your experience, from the company's experience. That's enough. Trust me, guys. It really is enough. People want to buy from other people. People want to buy from people that they trust, right? Not everything. I can't stand talking to AI. I can't stand talking to robots. But I need things too. I don't mind spending a little bit more from somebody I trust. I really don't even question it. I'm an easy sale. I think a lot of salespeople that are good are easy customers, easy to sell to. Because it's like, yeah, I'll pay the money if it makes sense. But yeah, so there's different levels. There's, the setting things up where you have to be very quick, very confident, and just, it's a yes or no decision, And it's just basically getting the foot in the door. Right? It could be like setting up a consultation for being a personal trainer. It could be setting up, if you're selling solar, a time for you to come by and take a look at their energy bill. I never did solar, so I don't know. But just something low investment, but some level of investment. Then after that, you want to see the real deal, like you're getting to the real conversation, right? Nobody's making a living selling things for like $20 unless they're doing it themselves, right? But companies hire salespeople to sell things for like 5-6 digit tickets, right? And it's not, even if it makes all the logical sense, it's not an easy decision for customers to make. Sales doesn't always make sense because it's not logical. People buy on emotions. They really do, right? And you can be the best offer, and it'll be easier to speak to their emotions that way because you know it to be true, right? But you still have to speak to their emotions, right? Because they're not the experts in the field. So, there's the level of prospecting. I always think you should be prospecting. Even if you're at a place that brings in leads, it's just good to know. It's just good to know how to get more people, because you can't fake abundance. You can't fake that mindset of there's people out there who need my services and all I gotta do is find them. But once you find people who might be of interest, that's where it gets deeper, and that's where people talk about being a closer. Being a closer is not about forcing a sale. Being a closer is not about being pushy. Being a closer is not about, I don't know, selling water to a whale or whatever you think it is. I mean, just think of the word close. You're just coming to a resolution, right? So many people don't know how to close because they don't know how to tick off all the boxes of the conversation. That might not make sense to you if you never sold anything, but if you have tried selling things to people, if you have a little bit of experience, or if somebody's told you this, there's a saying: buyers are liars. Everyone thinks salespeople are liars. Yes, some salespeople, maybe even a lot of salespeople, are liars. Man, I should have done this when my throat was all healed. I think I got like pharyngitis, but whatever. We move on. But really, buyers are liars. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make them bad people. It just means they're skeptical because they know you make a living off them giving you their money. So, if you knew that, would you really want to show the other person all of your cards? Of course not. So that's why closing is a skill in itself. That's why it takes a lot of sharpness to be able to do it. But it's not as hard as people think. It's not as about, you don't have to be as slick as you think. You really just need to know how to shut the fuck up and listen and ask the right questions. But they still have to know what you're offering. So a lot of times, if you're selling something and it's, an expensive thing, they're going to have to know what they're getting into. Say it's like home renovations. They're going to have to know the process. They're going to need to know the manufacturer of where you get your products from, the warranties, how long it's going to take, all of this stuff, things that are going to make you different, all of this stuff. If it's, something like health or coaching, they're going to need to know like what to expect, what they're going to need to be doing, and what they can hope to get out of it. There's different things, some things you're selling that are speaking to people's like pleasure sense. People, it's easy to sell fitness to people who can imagine themselves having the body they want, and that will allow them to attract the people they want, or something like that. But if you're selling something like a roof, nobody gets excited buying a roof. So you really have to speak to their pain points. Do they have past experiences that were unpleasant with home renovations? Are they experiencing a leak? Did they see what's up there? Did you take a look? Was there damages? Are they worried? There's different ways to go about it, but that's the ways you speak to their emotions. But you're still going to have to go through all of this stuff so they know the entire process. That's called your pitch. But if you really think about it, you're just presenting what you're going to be doing, right? It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be the bells and whistles. Like, people need to know. Like, in fact, if somebody were to say, I don't need to hear this, I'm ready to sign today, I would take a step back and say, no, you do need to hear this because, it's quite a big investment, and you need to know what you're getting into so the expectations are set and there's no feelings get upset, no misunderstandings, no frustrations when things didn't come out the way you thought because it wasn't discussed. So you always want to talk about what you're offering. This part of the process is like the only part where you might talk more than the customer, because you just are the one teaching them. You're showing them. You're coaching them. Sales is coaching. But even then, you should still be asking questions. You should still be reading their body language. You should still be seeing what do they like, what do they not like, where do they seem confused, where's the trepidations, because you're getting to the price, right? And after the price, there's no more pitching, there's no more presentation. There's just conversation and negotiation. So all their concerns need to be out of the way before you get to the price. The reason for that being is, if you can understand that everything else is good besides the price, then you understand that if they have objections after you're done, their only concern is the price. And that's totally valid because, most of us don't have much money in our savings accounts, right? Not everything is affordable to everybody. But if you're not clear on that before getting to the price, they could have doubts and concerns about so many different things. and they might not want to hurt your feelings, they might not want to show your cars, they might not want to do X, Y, and Z, but they probably won't tell you. There's real objections and there's smoke screens. Real objections is three things. They don't believe that you're going to help them, so they don't see the value. They do see the value, but it's not within their budget, or it's higher than they expected. Or they see the value, they didn't even bucket the price, it makes sense, they expected it to be that much, but they just don't know how they're going to pay for it. Those are three objections, right? If they don't see the value, that means you didn't really understand what they were discussing. Because if you understood their concerns, you could either tell them, hey, we can help you, or no, we can't help you. It might not be you're not qualified for that. It might just be their expectations are realistic. And then you can ask them questions like, how did you expect that to be accomplished? If it's that they do like you, but the price is way higher, well, that's the time where you need to be seeing, okay, well, what research have you done about this? How much did you expect all of these things to be? Questions like that. But you never, after you get to the price, you never present again. That's why people don't like salespeople. Because once you get to the price, the topic of selling them something is over. They already know everything that you were going to present. You don't need to remind them again, because that's just going to be like forcing them. Right? So something like personal training, which is how I got into sales, my God, is a lot easier, right? Most people can sign up at least for, a package, if not like a monthly deal, for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. They can at least do a package just to get started. So you didn't have to get deep into the weeds about money and stuff. But for bigger things, money becomes a legitimate concern. Right? And that's when you have to have uncomfortable conversations. It's not about forcing them into something they don't want to do. It's about figuring out what the concern really is. You have to ask the questions, and the questions have to come from things they have said throughout the entire process. And I promise you, it is actually crazy how much homeowners, or I say homeowners because I sell to homeowners now, but anybody, prospects, how much information they give to you without knowing it. They want to be sold to. Everybody wants to be sold to. It's a complete myth. They don't want to feel like they're being sold to. Nobody wants to be talked at, but everybody wants to be heard. That's the difference. People want to be sold to. And people are always going to tell you throughout what's really going on, and you're collecting information the whole time. I remember one time I was looking at a roof, and I got down and I just talked to the neighbor, a very nice older lady. And, I was just telling them, yeah, we did see some stuff. It seems kind of typical. I noticed your roof seems a bit older. I can definitely take a look. And she was like, no, we haven't had issues so far, and we might, tear the house down in 10 years. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. All I'm going to do is just take a look, inspect it, and if it's good, you get that reassurance. If not, I'll just show you, and, we can talk about it, but it's totally up to you what you want to do. And, she agreed, and her husband was home, both elderly folks. I got up there. Because it was an older home, it wasn't up to the standards of today. There was a lot of rotting wood at the eaves, which is where the gutters were. The shingles were, past its lifespan. That roof needed to get replaced, and it had storm damage from previous storms, so it seemed like something that could get covered through insurance. And so after I do all that, I show her what I see, right? I take a video. So sometimes you have to show the benefits, sometimes you have to show the current reality, because these older folks aren't getting on the roofs, they're not seeing the current reality. So that's uncomfortable, but it's the truth that their roof was in bad condition, and they can fix it now and not have to worry about leaks and paying for all of that stuff, or they can wait and roll the dice. So I show the video, and the husband is very concerned. She's concerned too, but I can tell he's very worried. And I see stuff like this, at that point, I wasn't super experienced in selling roofs, but I had seen enough that it wasn't like anything crazy to me, but it was a concern. And, nobody likes to be the bearer of bad news. Nobody likes to be the reason somebody's stressed or, anxious, but I was there to help them. And it wouldn't have been responsible for me to tell them everything's going to be, okay, when I don't know that to be the case. It was in a bad condition. So I let that anxiety kind of sit with them as I talked them through the process and explained what would happen. And then the husband said something like, oh, but we were going to tear this house down anyway. And that's when listening comes into place, because his wife told me that they weren't going to tear it down for at least 10 years if they were going to do it. So I said, oh, but your wife told me that you weren't going to do it for at least 10 years. And, we're talking this roof needs to get replaced way before that. And she jumped in and was like, yeah, what are you talking about? Like, we're not tearing this house down anytime soon. He believed me. He saw the video. He saw that the roof was in bad condition and it needed to get replaced. He just wanted the lie. He wanted the comfort of saying that this didn't need to be addressed. So that's not a real objection, but that's something a customer will say. Buyers are liars. You gotta have a certain level of cynicism and doubt without like hating people or doubting people. It's just understanding that it's all coming from fear and tension and all of these things. It's not that he didn't like me. It's not that he didn't believe me. It's just that he didn't want to accept that this roof is in bad condition and need to get replaced. I could have been like, hey, you know what? It's completely up to you. But here's my card, whatever. And who knows? Maybe it would have been okay and they would have got it done later, but there was a chance they could have gotten a leak. But the fact of the matter was I, stood firm. I told him what I saw. I called him out on what he was saying, and he had no other objections. We got the roof taken care of. It got covered through insurance because there was legitimate damage. They got a brand new roof up to modern standards, and all they had to pay was their deductible. I don't say that to brag, because that's a very standard story. Every salesperson has that story. It wasn't anything marvelous. But I say that to clear up misconceptions. It's not about selling water to a whale. It's not about giving people something they don't need or trying to rip them off or get a better deal. Believe it or not, even things that are good for people, even things that help people, need to be sold to them. People are constantly looking for someone to guide them through the decision. Nobody wants to give up control. Being a good salesperson is about being able to take control of a conversation. Nobody wants to give up control of a conversation, but control is just one side of responsibility. People do not want the burden of responsibility for so many things. For their health if they're not a health expert. For their home if they're not, in the trades, if they don't know about it. For insurance if they're not a broker. For, software if they're not a tech guy. They don't want that burden because they don't know enough. You take control by taking responsibility, right? Responsibility is just the other face of control. You take it by taking responsibility, right? You show them why you're the guy to help them. You show them by being an example, and by being a responsible salesperson, by calling them out when they're giving smokescreen objections. A smokescreen objection is just them saying something covering up their real concern, right? I need to think about it, but really it just might not be in their budget. I gotta talk to my wife. Really, I just don't trust it. All of these things, Being responsible is just making sure that you get to the real conversation. It's uncomfortable, it can be awkward, it can be tense. The better you are at talking to people and just being calm and natural and even building rapport beforehand, the easier it is. And not everybody is going to buy, not everyone should buy, and not everyone is even going to make sense. Like some people, I talk to them And I'm like, can you explain to me this logic? And they explain it, and it still doesn't make sense, and I can't convince them otherwise. You know, some people just, they got their ways, and maybe I'm just not good enough of a salesperson to help them. But you know, you can't sell everybody. But you have to take the responsibility of the conversation. You are the authority in whatever you're selling. If you're an artist, you are selling an experience for the gallery. You're selling, you know, experience for the audience. All of these things, you have to take responsibility and ownership. That's how you take control. That's how you get the sale. 35 minutes, damn, that's a long video. I need to probably write these scripts a little more, and I don't even feel like we touched the surface, but I'm definitely going to get more into it. Alright, let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you watch the whole video. You should watch the whole video. It's a good video.